But moving into Winchesters, which, by the way, I think if you like Winchesters, you probably like Gotham Knights. I don't know if that if we were to make a post, it'd be like Winchesters, Gotham Knights, cross audience, just for those who are interested. But that was a really good episode of the Winchesters. I was not
Where have they
ready.
been?
I know.
Like it was the most compelling, engrossing, all of the adjectives. It was the best episode in weeks.
It
Yeah,
was.
no, in my opinion, it's the best episode since the pilot, perhaps the best episode of the season.
There is so much like energy and style and the visuals. Like this is what I kind of wanted it to be each week. It was there's just between like the A story and the B story, there's just so much fun to look at, even if the stories weren't as fun. It's always a little bit
That opening. Just
yeah, the
unsettling with that clown.
the
The
clowns, the circus. Ada was in her New Orleans, or was she even in New Orleans? I don't know where she
I
was,
have no
but
idea
it
where she
was
was, but it
just
looked
like
fun.
so fun and stylized. And I was like, why'd you save this for the penultimate?
Now, when this show was pitched and this show started, this is what I thought it was going to be. And honestly, I kind of wish maybe they dropped the coherent single storyline and just do like a season of Villain of the Week episodes. Because if they could turn out like this and they're not being dragged down by the slow moving main story, that could be a heck of fun. And I know that's from an era gone by, but that was an excellent supernatural like quality episode. And I wish we had more of those from the Winchesters. I mean, if anything, it means it could be heading towards going out on a high, but I would have liked to have seen more of it because that was the Winchesters at its best.
It was. It also, if they had put this episode after the Mals Volta one, but like pulled back on some of the John and Mary to make it fit that part, I wouldn't have even blinked an eye. It really does work for the arc of John struggling with his anger and that spilling out into the case. So when we get returned to him and Mary, I was like, oh, I mean, I understand why he's mad because he was just accused of murder and he's on the run, but it just felt disconnected from where John had been because he had not been as angry. And so now we were really angry and trying to live in the bliss of being on the road with Mary as if we're not a fugitive.
No, I agree with you totally. I feel like if you take maybe one or two story beats out of that storyline, this episode could have fitted in anywhere in the season. And maybe the fact that it came so late makes you ask questions like that, as in where is that come from? Why is John suddenly like done a 180? And I know the fact that he's obviously been framed for murder and everything's affected him. But yeah, I want to say this episode came at the right time, but dare I say it could have come a little quicker? I don't know. But again, I don't want to just go into the whole, oh, this could have been this or it could have been that. I just want to appreciate this episode for what it was. High stakes, standalone, edge of seat, gimmicky, and more than anything, fun. And I think that's what's been missing in some of the more recent episodes.
I even like the conflict between John and Mary, as frustrating as it was as like a viewer. Like for me, like I don't want to see them fight. I want them to be fine. But like it was exciting to watch. Like Drake and Meg played off each other so well in that conflict that it was, even though you're like, oh, why are they, I don't want to see them fight. It was like, I don't know, it was really fun to watch. Like, like we know what's gonna happen. So like you can't worry about them too much. But like it felt like this conflict was deserved and earned a little bit. So like when you're watching it, you're like, oh, this is good stuff. Um, and even in the scenes where like they're splitting up at the carnival or whatever, and that dig John throws in like, oh, actually, I'll go with Lata. And I was like, ooh.
Yeah.
I don't know. I really enjoyed that aspect of it, even as frustrating as it is as like a shipper, I guess.
Yeah, well, this episode was really honest. It was really vulnerable too. And there can be an honesty and anger as well. So, like, because a lot of times you need to be angry in order to say the thing that you haven't been saying. And I love that the main point is they both like basically yelling at each other. You're hiding behind me instead of dealing with what's actually happening in your life. And to be able to be combative with somebody that you care for and still be able to be like, I'm going to protect you at all costs. that's something that works really well for John and Mary, especially like I also love how, in a way, clowns are ridiculous, but they're also terrifying. And so, like, we have the terror of actually dealing with our emotions and the terror of the monster of the week, who also had trauma from wanting to be able to remain in happiness, and how a need to, what did they call it? Toxic happiness, toxic positivity.
Mhm.
This was an episode about toxic positivity, and that's what John was doing, and that's what Limbo was doing. And there's you have to be able to deal with the negatives in your life, and that is what this episode was about.
Mm. And then the fact that it jumped to the end when John was doing everything he was supposed to, even with the anger holding him back, he went into that mission with like a clear head. He knew to cover his eyes so that he wouldn't see the mirror. And then that ultimate feeling of defeat when he just turned around and he looked at the wrong mirror and he had the clown makeup on, and just that moment when the tear came down his face. Oh, that crushed me, because like he had the smile on his face, but he was broken on the inside because it happened and there was no getting away from it. I thought that was very expert use of the merging the overall character's arc with the villain of the week story. It worked out really, really well. And I feel like that was the most crushing moment of it all. And it's pretty effective. We have talked about how it's constantly had to be Mary or John saving each other week in, week out, week in, week out. This week it was up to Lata and Carlos to do it. And the fact that all of the stories interconnected at once. There was no subplots in this episode. We got to see them work as a foursome again for the first time in who knows how long.
Mhm.
And they came through for them. They were the MVPs of this episode. You also got to see the perspectives on John and Mary's argument. You got to go back to some of those original dynamics that were fun. Like John and Lata had a really nice friendship. And of course, Mary and Carlos knew each other for a long time, but there was that kind of awkward tension. So we got to explore all of that in one episode. So in a way, I do see why this was left at the penultimate episode, because you got to deal with all of that at the same time. But it also reminded me of what we were missing throughout the season, because you got some of them great dynamics that we didn't get in so long. But generally, there was just so much in there, and I really appreciate it that no subplots, the main story, and all of the characters got a moment or two to shine.
There were a lot of little moments that I love too, like to your point, the Mary and Carlos scene where they're going through the carnival, and I think they're talking about John, and she just like she spins around and like starts crying into Carlos, and he's uncomfortable. And I was like, Mary, I know you're not crying. Like, this seems like the fake. I was like, what? This is so weird and out of character. I kind of liked it. And then I was like, okay, you're on your Nancy Drew tea. I love that she was like, there's somebody following us. And I was like, Mary, that's my girl.
And then Carlos was horrible at like not like looking, what she say, at his 1 o'clock or something. And
Mhm.
he immediately gave up what they were doing. I was like, Carlos, be stealthier. Be stealthier.
I
And
also loved in the beginning, John eating that sandwich. Like, I need to see the behind the scenes of that, because I know that was just Drake eating a sandwich.
yeah, he's like, it's an amazing sandwich too. And I was looking at that thing, I was like, it's not. I see what might be roast beef and some mayonnaise. There's nothing else on the sandwich.
We're overcompensating here, John.
It was really funny though.
It was. I think that this episode does well, besides getting to nitty gritty, is there is some levity to it.
Mm.
And there's like, it doesn't lean into the ridiculousness, but I love how Carlos and Lata save the day inside a clown car as they talk to a clown child who is his brother. And that is how. But it's serious business and it's serious acting, and you know it has to be skilled writing and it's skilled acting, because the whole scenario ridiculous, like just hilarious.
Did they know that was the way to like break the curse spell or whatever, or was that just like luck on Carlos's part? I'm willing to suspend my disbelief. I really don't care. But like in the moment I was like, did they know, or was that just like Carlos was like, I can do this?
There was a moment in the hotel when they're looking through the books, and this is where I had to suspend disbelief, because apparently no one's ever gotten out of Limbo's tent, but somehow they know how to defeat Limbo. But so so in one of the books it says that in order to defeat Limbo, you have to convince someone that he's captured to face their sadness, because the whole point is for them to for him to get rid of their sadness by forcing them to be happy and content. the entire time. So if you make a victim confront it, it kills him. And I was like, but no one's escaped the tent. So how do you know?
That's a really interesting lore, because it's like then the bigger his army grows, the more vulnerable he gets because there's more people you can convince. I knew that when they were talking to the child that they knew if they broke the spell, he would get out and Limbo would get weaker. I didn't think that that poor clown was just going to turn into dust and then melt in front of everyone. I was like, whoa, this escalated quickly. But no, I to your point, I completely agree. It was they were trapped in a clown car while basically surrounded by the Walking Dead dressed like clowns. And then you had room for this really poignant moment in the middle of that. It all came together really, really nicely. But like suspending your disbelief really paid off, because like that was a really nice moment.
It was. And pairing that with Ada's plot was interesting too. I'm not a supernatural watcher, so I don't know who Rowena is. But the acting was fine and I loved her accent.
Spooky poker, I was into
yes.
it.
And it was to be, we didn't get to see which kind yet. So to see Ada, who's usually confident, out of her element and a bit insecure and trying to prove herself was interesting. I love that new layer to her character. And I really didn't like that they shamed her for being an earth witch, as she can kill you with a vine. Why are you mocking her for it?
Yeah, and it's again, this is what really makes me wonder what we kind of missed throughout the season, because how many episodes have we gone without Ada? Have we even seen her since the mid-season premiere a couple of weeks ago? You know what I mean? Like how is that a series regular character? I wish we kind of learned more about her, because she was kind of came across as like the veteran of the group, and now in this episode you saw that she felt inexperienced, she wasn't confident in herself, and that's a lot of rich stuff to work with. And now we learn that she may be the MVP to defeating the Akrita, and you're like, that's a big reach in a couple of episodes, but I mean, we'll roll with it because I really like the character of Era. But I just wish we got to spend a little more time with those, because that's a really interesting character arc for her.
If this had been a 22 episode season, she probably would have been absent for like 4 episodes. Then we would have gotten maybe like an Ada standalone episode where we see what she had been up to, and it would have just been her episode. And it would have, it would have worked a little bit better than just like tossing her back in. We're like, oh, you're back. Okay. Like I have been worried about her for 4 weeks, but no news is good news, I guess. They haven't mentioned her, so I was like, okay, whatever. But yeah, I think if they had more time, it would have worked a little bit better. Because I don't think in a 13 episode season you can take John and Mary out of the equation and just focus on a supporting character. I don't think you can do that with this few episodes.
It would have been like a major risk, even though the way they balanced it this episode, they probably could have had her at least be the B plot in one of the episodes. Especially because when they bring her back, we're hitting the ground running. I mean, by the end of the episode, she's got a whole, I might have to sacrifice a piece of myself in order to stop the Akrita. And I was like, well, girl, we just got you back.
I know, it's a lot to care about all at once.
Yeah. But I do care about it though. Like I'm interested to see where we go in the finale, and whether or not she actually will end up using the stone she was given. I will say, and I know we said this last pod, the dean of it all. Like I get why he wasn't in this episode, but like they had alluded that they were on the hunt for him. And then we just didn't deal with him at all. And we had this really great clown plot. And so now, are we dealing with him in the finale? Is he still in the photos? Like, that's what I want to know.
It's interesting because it feels like Ada's kind of become the MVP or the secret weapon to destroying the Akrita, and that's what they were kind of building Dean up to be. So I hope it's not the case of that Ada gets 3/4 through her plan and she can't complete it or whatever, and then Dean shows up and saves the day in the last few minutes. Because if they were going to do that, I wish they hadn't like taken us by the hand to that point, because now we know something's going to happen with Dean in the finale, because they set us up with the photos. They were talking about it at the start of this episode and then completely shifted gears. He wasn't mentioned again. If he just shows up in the finale now, it's going to feel like a bit of a letdown because we knew it was going to happen to begin with. Whereas I wish they would have just dropped that subplot altogether and then surprised us with it in the finale, if that makes sense. Or just let Ada shine, because we don't know what she's been up to. Like, show us how strong she actually is. I think that would have been a better send-off. I'm not going to judge beforehand, but I just feel like there's been so much happening. I'm really excited to see how it ends because of how strong this episode was. I just hope they don't have too much to work with in only 40 minutes.
I hope so. I mean, it looks like it's based on the promo. It looks like it's going to be exciting, and if I'm correct, we saw John in uniform, so maybe we're flashing back to when he's given the letter about his dad's secret life. But I don't know. I mean, it is going to be. I hope they stick their landing. I feel like if they stick their landing, this whole season, viewing wise, would have been really worth it. You know, to have felt like you'd been on this journey with them, and yeah, it had struggles, but there were a lot of high moments too. And I would want a season 2.
Yeah, this is the episode that I was like, you know what? Season 2, I'm back in.
Right?
Because for a while I was like, I'd be okay if it ended after one season. It would suck because I love this cast, but like this episode, I was like, no, they still got gas in the tank. Let's let's
Mhm.
give them a shot.
Yeah. So I mean, if CW doesn't want them, shop it.
Yeah.
Just shop the show. I feel like it could find a home somewhere, even with low viewership. Because to be fair to the other CW shows, low viewership is the name of the game. Even the golf is suffering. So
And these shows are remarkable worldwide. I feel like a Supernatural spin-off would be. So manifesting a season 2, even if it's a season full of filler episodes, because if they're anything like that one, I take it.
and so Mo, you have your orders. Well, at least you have a bullet point. Wait for more bullet points just in case.